Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stefanie Drysdale's weekly cybersecurity recap, number 12 for Friday, March 27th, 2020. Brought to you by Prescient, Prescient.com with Stefanie Drysdale, Vice President of Cyber. Ms. Stefanie, welcome back.
This week, I shared an article on how EXIF data on your photographs can be obtained by someone who perhaps you send a text photo to or something like that. This data can include like your location info, where the photograph was taken, information about the device that it was taken on. Obviously, from an analyst perspective, we love this information and we want everyone to always have it on. But from a privacy perspective, you definitely don't want to overshare this kind of information. A lot of social media sites will strip this data before they post it. They actually take it for themselves, which can create a whole other problem. But for the most part, it's just good to know that that information exists and to deselect the location services on your camera if you don't want some of that information included. Matias Wilson hosted a video on conducting OSINT or open source intelligence investigations around the world. This was a really great high level just to kind of give people an idea of just some of what goes into some of these investigations and how you can do a little bit of this searching and information gathering on your own. Obviously, there are far more advanced cases and things along those lines, but a really, really good peek into the world of an analyst. Gabriel Friedlander pushed out a 23-page flip book for best practices for working safely from home during the COVID crisis. This was a really, really helpful high-level look at all the various touch points that have to be addressed when you work from home and the cybersecurity relating to that. From a friends and family version or just an employee perspective, it was great. But also, if you're an IT team that hasn't quite addressed these specifics, it's really helpful to make sure that you're touching on all the important points for your team if you're trying to build out this program. So for all things coronavirus and COVID-19, I have a few things to throw out at you this week. Coronavirus monitoring, especially in other parts around the world, they're doing geo-tracking, required check-ins, any kind of facial recognitions, hefty fines of up to $30,000 US in other parts of the world. If you think you don't like our shelter-in-place rules, those would be far worse than what we have going on right now. However, the statistics do speak for themselves that it is working there. So understand that ours is kind of an adapted model, more geared toward the U.S. citizen. So it could be far worse on both fronts. The virus could be allowed to just run rampant, or we could be far more shut down. So I think we're in kind of a middle ground right now with how it's being handled here in the U.S. I wanted to call out some attention to the political messaging as it relates to COVID-19. You've got a lot of different news outlets that are really looking at it from different perspectives, and it really all comes down to economic versus human lives. And while they're both incredibly important, and there is a balance that's required for that, obviously human life should always come first, but we have to be mindful that an economic, Great Depression 2.0 would definitely not be welcome either. Be mindful that the sources that you are looking into for your news and your information aren't completely biased in one way or another, that there really does truly have to be a balance in how we handle this. This week, there was an article that discussed theories about social distancing on a sporadic basis. So instead of just a solid 6 to 9 months of social distancing or sheltering in place, to look at what it would look like for people to shelter in place for 2 months and then come out for a bit. And then when the numbers indicated that we needed to shut it back down, to go back to that model periodically, that is something that doesn't have a lot of evidence behind it quite yet, but it may be something that we see on the horizon for how we deal with this. I don't think this is going away in a few weeks. So that's something to consider. One thing that I also like to kind of call out at this particular moment is mental health and domestic violence, especially with obviously domestic partners, but also with children. These people don't have school and work to escape to now, and they don't have the support of other people. They're very isolated. So it's really important that we check in with those people that are maybe more vulnerable and just make sure that they're weathering this stress and this really tough time in a safe way. Seth Cutler has an ongoing list that he's compiling of COVID-19 scams, really helpful to understand the kind of scams that are coming along with this crisis, whether it relates to donations or whether it relates to fake CDC emails. Just be on the lookout and don't click anything that comes across your inbox that may potentially be harmful. Sterling Miller shared two great checklists this week. The first one was responding to a positive COVID-19 test for one of your employees, really helpful for GCs. And then an insurance checklist for coronavirus losses. This is going to be huge. Everyone is losing a ton of money right now. Unemployment just spiked. So we're wanting to definitely make sure that businesses have the support that they need and that you're logging your losses as they go to try to help recovery efforts. Frederick Lemieux shared an article about how smartphone data is revealing whether Americans are or are not distancing. Really, really interesting data about how our cell phones are tattling on us right now. It's not necessarily indicating specific people that, Stefanie didn't, stay home when she was supposed to, but just watching the movement and watching activity. And how we're learning which parts of the country are getting A's in this category and which ones are not. John Davis wrote an article about managing cybersecurity in a time of a pandemic. I thought this was a really, really great write-up. It talks about business continuity, cyber hygiene, and then scaling a remote workforce. There are companies that never, ever wanted to go to a remote model that are being forced to right now, and some are doing an amazing job. So this, I thought, was a great resource from a really respected person in the industry giving some really clear guidance. Thomas Davenport from Sickich shared an article this week about options for coronavirus impacted businesses and nonprofits and ways for them to obtain working capital. Obviously, capital is going to be scarce right now, and so businesses that need a little help through this time can use some guidance and support. So that was a really helpful article as well. Bellingcat, trusted source of information, shared some information on disinformation campaigns around the coronavirus. Make sure that the information that you're getting is correct, not that it echoes what you want to hear, but that is truly sourced from medical professionals and people who have access to the data and statistics behind this. Really important that your information is accurate. Ningio is sharing a free work from home cybersecurity awareness training, really helpful for your remote teams. I want to plug really quick, a lot of people in my industry right now, security, CISOs, CSOs, directors, security directors are looking for work right now. If you know of any great positions, either in the UK or in the US or even in the Chicago area, please reach out to me. I would love to connect you with some really stellar talents. And then I want to make sure everyone knows that Chuck Harold and Chuck Andrews are hosting their CoronaCon 2020. It's going to be April 1st through 3rd, and they're going to be talking to really cool people about all things Corona, which, great. We can't get enough of that, right? But it's going to be great information coming from a lot of really, really brilliant people. So make sure that you catch that. So that's what I have for you this week. I hope everyone is staying healthy, staying safe, staying sane and home. And I hope to see y'all next week.